I'm Misty, 27 years old. After graduating from a vocational school, I now work as a nurse in a surgical ward. Every day is busy. I started dating Ken, who's the same age as me, through a friend from vocational school who works in the same field. Kent is a doctor at a cosmetic clinic. Despite our busy schedules, we went on dates and got engaged after 2 years of being together. You might think that sounds smoothly perfect, but life isn't always so straightforward. I painfully realized this during an incident that occurred when Ken and I went to his parents' home for a family meeting. My family has a tradition of being doctors. Kent continued. Of course, his house was large too. Being a designated heir to a medical family isn't something you just decide to become. Generation after generation, this meant clearing the hurdle of graduating from medical school. Impressive! And to maintain this legacy, their family must be very dedicated to education. This strictness was evident from the polished entrance hall mirror and the vase on the shoe rack, filled with meticulously cared for Casablanca lilies. When we were shown to the living room, we were offered coffee and sweets. I was told the china was Wedgwood, the coffee black ivory, and the sweets Godiva. I only recognized Godiva. I had never heard of black ivory, and I couldn't immediately identify Wedgwood. So, Misty, you're a nurse at Yale New Haven Hospital, the largest in Connecticut, aren't you? Ken's mom then asked. She had that quintessential doctor's wife air about her. Yes, I replied nervously. Are you a registered nurse by chance? I'm actually a licensed practical nurse. I was surprised to be asked that. Maybe it's a concern in a doctor's family. But it seemed that distinction was an important factor in Ken's home. This is troubling, she said, aligning with Ken's dad, who also chimed in. Indeed, quite troubling. Meanwhile, I tentatively asked, is there a problem? I asked, making a tentative inquiry. As a practical nurse, I'm not allowed to perform medical procedures without a doctor's orders, unlike a registered nurse. However, since I don't work at Ken's family clinic, it didn't seem like they were concerned about staffing issues. Then, Ken's parents began to say something quite peculiar. Being a practical nurse, this salary isn't that high, is it? That means you'll have to lower your standard of living. And genetically speaking, whether you can bear children to continue this family line. They started saying things like that. Well, think it over carefully. They gave a softly negative response typical of an upper-class family, and we left Ken's house. They opposed us more than I thought they would. I frowned in the car, driving back to my place after leaving Ken's house. But at this point, having been together for 2 years, I thought things would work out somehow. After all, things in life often don't go smoothly. That was the extent of my thoughts. That's true, but they didn't completely oppose us, right? He had said that too. Encouraged by his words, I thought it would be okay to take my time to gain acceptance. However, I would soon learn just how naive this idea was. 2 weeks later, I was called out by Ken. What's going on? I arrived at the cafe where I was called to, thinking it was just our usual rendezvous. But there was someone else there. And that person was... Kara? To my surprise, it was my senior. Why was Kara here? The story unfolded like this. After that day, Ken's dad had suggested to Ken, it's difficult to lower our standard of living. Especially when gathering with doctor colleagues, having a child who is a practical nurse would be educationally inferior. It's harsh, but in the medical world, that's considered the bottom. This creates a disparity. Ultimately, it would make both you, Misty, and Kent unhappy. And he has suggested to Ken, Misty was at Yale New Haven Hospital, right? I know some doctors there. I'll introduce you to someone suitable for marriage. It seems he said to Ken. And the person he introduced was surprisingly my senior. Kara at 32 was older than both Kent and me. but she had indeed graduated from a prestigious university's nursing program and was successfully climbing the ladder as a registered nurse in a managerial position. So I thought about it. Like Dad said, as a practical nurse, you'll never make it to a managerial position. And financially, it's poverty, right? And you probably wouldn't fit in with an elite family. That would make us both unhappy. Dad introduced Kara, and to be honest, you can't beat Kara. Not in brains, income, or even looks. Caught off guard by the conversation they had clearly prepared for, my brain struggled to keep up. Unhappiness? Being a practical nurse equated to unhappiness. The words practical nurse and unhappiness raced through my mind. Then I turned my eyes to Kara in front of me. Kara was beautiful. She had long limbs and a great figure. She smiled seductively. Sorry, I took him. All I could do was hang my head. No, it's my shortcomings. Why? Why did it have to end like this? We had been dating for 2 years. We never even had a single fight. I learned how to cook, and I loved him so much. Tears fell like rain onto my skirt. Kent said, Well, that settles it. Let's all stay friends. Guess it's true, you can't get married with a bottom to your job. He summed it up with a sense of triumph. I'm engaged. The ring is from Harry Winston. Wow, that's amazing. Kara was showing off her ring. Nurses around her age were excitedly admiring it, saying how wonderful it was. I passed by them silently. That ring, Kent had given it to her. All I felt was emptiness. I had just returned my engagement ring. Even though the brand was different, just days after returning mine, someone else, my direct singer, was wearing his engagement ring. There was nothing more disheartening than this. But seriously, who shows off like that? Kara's too much. She has no consideration or restraint towards you, which really makes me question her as a person. Hannah, a colleague who knew the situation, frowned and said, She may be beautiful, but she thinks of practical nurses as slaves, and she acts all high and mighty about her promising future. I really can't stand her. You're 100 times cuter in my eyes. Just think of him as a guy with no taste. Hannah comforted me. In reality, Kara did look down on practical nurses and was too arrogant as a senior, disliked by her juniors. I usually kept my distance from her. But today, Kara deliberately came over to me. The wedding is set for June. I'm inviting all the nurses from our department. Despite everything, I hope you can attend, Misty. Kara said that to me. I was speechless. I think anyone in my position would have reacted the same way. Don't worry, I will mention in the wedding bio that the groom dumped you for me. Kara said this loudly. At that moment, it was clear to everyone that Ken had left me for Kara. But I'm inviting all the nurses from our department, so please come, she emphasized. I stood there stunned. Hannah was fuming next to me. But even Hannah's voice seemed distant to my ears. Can you believe this kind of harassment? Hannah was indignant and hit a nearby pillar with a bang. Well, but it can't be helped. That's right, it can't be helped. Kent chose Kara over me. That's all there is to it. I tried to convince myself of that, but my emotions, the reality, couldn't keep up. As long as I'm here, I'll keep hearing about Kent, and eventually Kara will become the head nurse. I was overworked and felt utterly miserable. In between work, I pursued job opportunities. It was less about wanting a new job and more about trying to sever ties with the past. Looking back, it feels like I was just escaping reality. Fortunately, there was a shortage of nurses, so I quickly found a new job. I decided to resign before the wedding, so I didn't have to attend it after all. But the rumors spread through the ward, and of course to the patients. Nurse, are you leaving? A newly admitted child asked me, looking sad. You encouraged me so much when I was admitted with severe injuries. A middle school girl hospitalized with severe facial injuries from a traffic accident sadly held my hand. But we will meet again, if you live with hope, because this world is connected. I held her hand back. Although I said that, I was genuinely concerned about her. But since she was admitted after I had submitted my resignation, I couldn't postpone it. Hannah had organized a departmental farewell party and also a smaller, private one for us. During that time, please take care of that child's mental well-being, I requested. Leave it to me. I'll take care of her perfectly, Hannah responded. Years later, the group from that farewell party got together again for a reunion. It was like an alumni meeting, which we held regularly, but this one was a bit special. We were kicked out of the pub at last call, but continued talking outside until after midnight. It was then that I was asked to do something. I had deleted Ken's contacts from my phone, but one of our groups still had it and arranged for me to meet Ken through her. That was the favor I was asked. Long time no see, he smiled condescendingly. There was no awkwardness. So, what's Misty up to now? At the cafe where we met, Kent ordered a coffee. He's going to dump a ridiculous amount of sugar in it, right? I know him too well. I thought about it, but was annoyed at myself for remembering such things. While watching him drink his overly sweet coffee. Still in a bottom-tier job? Well, I guess it can't be helped if you're still a practical nurse, Kent said. I sipped my tea without sugar or milk. Even after all these years, his talk of bottom-tier jobs irritated me. Is there really a bottom or top in professions? I thought the same when I broke up with Kent, but people like him relieve stress by looking down on others. They belittle those they consider beneath them. Just watch, I'll crush him. I'll make him pay for everything. I downed my tea, and as I looked at the empty cup, I switched into battle mode. I'll shake up and overturn his value system today. I put the empty cup down with a deliberate clatter, and looked Kent straight in the face, ready to fire back. What? What are you talking about? My salary now exceeds $300,000, you know. What? Kent froze, his face still twisted in the mocking smile from before. I began to tell him what happened after we broke up. You know, just before I left Yale New Haven Hospital, a girl came in with stitches on her face from an accident. She had broken bones too, but meeting her changed my life. I don't get it. I felt like I could see question marks popping up over Kent's head. But I continued my story undeterred. That girl cried every day and night because of her scars. She was underage and her parents were resistant to plastic surgery. She had liked a boy, but now she felt everything had turned dark in an instant. It's typical for a teenage girl. I never felt so grateful to be a nurse. My knowledge in nursing, like understanding bone structure, was crucial. I taught her how to apply foundation. Green concealer can hide redness. Shadows here, highlights there, can bring out the contours of the bones. It was rehabilitation makeup. She brightened up so much. Makeup can really change a person. Seeing that made me so happy. Coincidentally, my next job was in emergency nursing, where I met many people suddenly injured in accidents. I taught them how to hide scars on their faces and arms. It was especially appreciated by women and mothers, and I found my calling there. While nursing, I also studied makeup. After our engagement ended and I was a single with savings, I opened my own rehabilitation makeup studio. It's not about healing wounds, but offering a way of life that embraces them. Hey, wait, so you're saying you're my rival now in the beauty business? Rival? I laughed mockingly. A rival would mean you have real skills in cosmetic surgery and are successful, right? What? Kent looked taken aback. Unfortunately, we can't be rivals. Not with your clinic. I tapped on my mobile phone, showing him Google reviews. Kent's cosmetic surgery clinic was filled with negative reviews like, they only pointed out my flaws, overpriced, and the procedures weren't impressive. In contrast, my studio received only praises with comments like, it made me feel positive, and I'm not bothered by my scar anymore. I think this will hit you like a body blow. As Kent struggled to respond, I unleashed a verbal barrage. I've heard from clients who came to me from you. You suggested expensive procedures to people who pointed out other flaws they had. Low nose, thin lips, wrinkled skin. And then upsold them on additional surgeries, adding those to their bills unasked. Well, it's their choice whether to get the procedures or not. Exactly, it's their choice. And that's why they end up coming to me instead. My makeup studio isn't just for rehabilitation makeup. I do regular makeup too, like anti-aging. Especially this review was significant. I pointed out one of the many critical reviews on my phone. The surgery made my buttocks uneven. This patient is currently visiting my studio. What? Kent's face turned pale. That person, they're suing us now, right? He blurted out before I even had to say anything. It saved me the trouble of explaining. Yes, they are suing. But you know, I don't just do makeup. I've also set up a gym with the funds I've accumulated, doing a total beauty production. This person came to me very depressed, but through working out and building muscle at the gym, their body line has improved and they're experiencing small victories. Their mental state has become much more positive. So, a clinic being sued for incompetence can't really be a rival to my studio, right? You should stop being so arrogant with your bottom-tier skills. I emphasized the word bottom tier deliberately. Bottom tier? Before he could retort. That term, bottom tier skills, came from a client at the gym about you. Kent's lips twitched and he fell silent. I wonder how it feels to be hit with the word bottom tier. I straightened my back and looked down at him deliberately. Amidst this, my mobile phone rang. The verdict is in. It was from Hannah. After hearing the details and hanging up. There's another piece of news today. The results are in. I informed Kat with an expressionless face. What results? Ken asked back, visibly scared. He was clearly frightened. It was pitiful. You don't know anything, do you? I laughed. Your wife didn't tell you anything? My wife? What about her? So, about those remarks, practical nurses should pick up garbage, and practical nurses are slaves? That's a problem, right? Apparently, you've been sued by the Federal Labor Department. What? You're getting disciplined and fired. I'd look forward to it if I were you. I placed the money for my drink on the table and smiled at Kent, who was dripping cold sweat. By now, the income gap between us from when we were dating has probably reversed, and even widened. In the nursing world, news spreads fast. Your wife, she won't be able to find a job again, especially after doing something like that at a big hospital like Yale New Haven. She's done. Kent, seemingly in disbelief. That can't be. He muttered under his breath, sweating even more. Today, I came here as part of a plan made by all the practical nurses you and your wife look down upon. I wanted to see the face of Kara's proud husband, who married an elite doctor, because she's a registered nurse, upon hearing today's verdict. Think it's vindictive, but that's exactly what those of us who have been belittled by you both want to do. That's... Thought you were part of the privileged class loved by money, did you? The husband laughed at those he considered bottom tier, only to be surpassed by them, and the wife ridiculed them, only to be destroyed by them. How does it feel now? I said this as I was leaving. Also, you might not have noticed inside the building, but my studio is just 20 meters from your cosmetic surgery clinic. I've also set up a gym nearby, so when your clinic fails, I'll buy the place. That's likely to happen soon. Kent looked utterly shocked. As I had predicted, Kent's cosmetic clinic soon went out of business. I had seen the negative reviews and heard from clients who considered his clinic before coming to mine. I put a yoga studio in the clinic's former location. I heard Kara was fired after being sued by the Federal Labor Department. When I went to inspect the site for the yoga studio design, I ran into Ken and Kara. They were probably there to sigh over the remains. When Kent saw me, "Long time no see. Congratulations on expanding with a yoga studio," he said. "You don't have to offer congratulations if you don't mean it," I replied coldly. Then, "Hey, you're expanding your business, right? Why don't you start a cosmetic clinic too? Then I could..." Before he could finish, "I have no interest in hiring an incompetent doctor," I cut him off sharply. "Then at least take me," as Kara started to say. "I don't need staff who lack teamwork and look down on others." I dismissed her outright. "Sorry, but I can't have a constructive conversation in the presence of the former owners," I told the real estate agent who accompanied me, and they escorted Kent and Kara out. Thus, I successfully opened a yoga studio near my makeup studio. Several years later, I attended a wedding. But it wasn't my wedding. It was the wedding of the girl who had gotten facial stitches in an accident just before I left Yale New Haven Hospital. "Thank you. I became positive because of you, Misty. People say my scar is hardly noticeable unless mentioned, and he loves me even without makeup." She read a letter. "Congratulations. Truly congratulations." I shed tears. Life isn't for those who laugh looking down. It's for those striving upwards. I will continue to work, supporting those who want to face forward and look up.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.